Warning: the following video contains graphic content that may be disturbing to some viewers. Subscribe now and be prepared to be gripped by the darkest tales ever told. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Your Milk and Cereal. My name is Vera Arlilia, your host and the owner of Your Milk LLC, a brand that specializes in both handcrafted skincare and self-care products. You've made it past the countdown, you've made it past the warning, you've made it this far, so let me tell you why you're here. You are interested in one of two things: soap making or true crime. Well, my friend, what if I told you that today those two things will be one and the same? This is the chilling tale of Leonarda, the soap maker of Correggio, whose hands were not only stained by the suds of her craft, but also by the blood of her victims. Sidebar: please forgive me in advance for any words that I will mispronounce, as today's story takes place in Italy. Please know that I do so out of love and respect for your country, but also with the assistance of Google Translate. For instance, instead of saying the soap maker of Correggio, I really wanted to say La sapanificatrice di Correggio. But I knew I was going to butcher it, and I did. And I'm going to say it because it was cool. Gotta say it one time. And now that I have both probably gotten your attention as well as lost your interest simultaneously, I am going to go ahead and continue on with the story. Let's venture into the quaint streets of Correggio, Italy during the earliest 20th century. As I was researching this story, there was layers upon layers upon layers of very disturbing events, even starting with Leonarda's conception. It was said that Leonarda's mother, Amelia, was sexually assaulted by a man in the village, and this resulted in a pregnancy. Now, mind you, we're talking about the late 1800s at this point, and I'm not saying that this does not happen in modern times, but due to this, Amelia's parents then forced her to marry the man who assaulted her, so that she did not bring shame upon the family. Along with this, it is mentioned that Amelia was not very close with Leonarda. I don't want to go into details if it was because of this assault, but I think we can put two and two together. Maybe I'll get 4 and you'll get 5, but it kind of made Leonarda act in a way to where she was constantly seeking approval, seeking love, seeking acceptance from anywhere at this point. Even as a young girl, there were whispers that she dabbled in the occult. It definitely could have been a phase. I had my moment. I'm going to age myself, but I don't know if you guys remember the movie The Craft. Nobody could tell me that I was not Nancy, okay? I mean, dark clothes, lipstick, platforms, everything. Now, I could say for me it was a phase. I don't know if I could say the same for Leonarda, because here we are today. However, they did say as she grew older, she did become more stable, and one day she even got married. But Leonarda's mother, Amelia, did not approve of this union because she married a registry office clerk. So guess what Amelia did? Okay, we already talked about dabbling in the occult. Well, she put a curse on Leonarda. Okay? Leonarda found a man, married him, and her mother put a curse on her. I don't think that was something that Leonarda ever got over, because shit gets real from this point. So I know I said that we were going to venture in the quaint streets of Correggio, Italy, but before we got there, we were in the streets of Montella, Italy. That's where all this stuff happened. So now let's fast forward, and now let's venture down the streets of Correggio, Italy. This is where Leonarda and her husband decided to settle. Okay, in Correggio, Leonarda presented herself as a gentle and caring woman. She was running a modest shop, and she earned the trust of her neighbors. But as I said, shit gets real. So we're going to consider the stability as the phase, because during this time, Leonarda started diving back into the supernatural, and she started like seeking solace and answers because once again, we talked about her conception, we talked about her relationship with her mother, we talked about her dabbling into the occult, and then her mother turned around and put a curse on her. Okay? So when things started looking a little dark and, not the way that she had planned, she then turned to fortune tellers and palm readers, hoping to gain insight on why things were the way that they were. One of the chilling prophecies struck her, though. One of the fortune tellers told her that all of her children would die young. Again, we went through this woman's life. She moved to a completely different village, and now a fortune teller is telling her all of her children are going to die. Pretty sure the woman snapped, okay? That's why we have the show. I don't know if it's still on, but I remember the show snapped. After the fortune teller told her this, Leonarda endured the pain of 17 pregnancies. She had 3 miscarriages, and 10 children die in either infancy or early childhood. That left her with 4 surviving children at this point. Needless to say, her maternal instincts kicked into overdrive, and she really became obsessed with the safety of the 4 children that she had left. As we mentioned, she already dabbled in the occult in her past, and she was kind of bringing it back into her current day life, and the stable facade that she had just started to crumble.
This just in. It is now being reported that you have not yet liked the video. Consider this a friendly reminder to do so, as it's a free way to support the channel. Thanks in advance. Back to you, Ramira.
As she turned to dark rituals and superstitions, just desperate to hang on to those 4 children that she had left. So again, I know I keep bringing it back, but you had the fortune teller tell her that all of her children would die young. She endured 17 pregnancies, which resulted in only 4 live children. And then her eldest son, Giuseppe, that was a word I could say. Giuseppe declared his intentions to join the Italian army to fight in World War II. So now we're in 1939 at this point. Leonarda remembers this prophecy. How could she forget it? So she wanted to do whatever she could to make sure that her son was safe and that she did not endure the pain of losing another child. So this is where she decides to turn to human sacrifices. Aside from being the trusted soap maker of Correggio, she also was known to be a fortune teller. So she would advise women of the village. They would come to her. They trusted her. I don't know if all of their predictions came true, but it was enough to where women were paying her as well to, help them get jobs, help them find love, things like that. That is how she met her 3 victims. The first name was Faustina, who is described as an older woman who longed for companionship and a husband. Leonarda used that to her advantage to lure this woman into her home by telling her that she could foresee her true love in a town nearby. Leonarda then convinced Faustina to write letters to her friends and loved ones, telling them that she was moving to a different town in order to be with her destined partner. This manipulation left Faustina at the fate of Leonarda's hands, who not only lured her into her home, she offered her a glass of wine, drugged her, and murdered her with an axe. Now, I don't know at what point Leonarda suspected that this worked, but in comes her next victim, Francesca. Francesca trusted Leonarda based on her reputation, and Leonarda promised to secure her a job at a school in a nearby town. So once again, she convinced her to also write letters to her loved ones and friends, telling them that she was moving to another town. When she showed up to make payment for the services, Leonardo did the same thing and murdered her with an axe. So as I was reading, at this point, I'm thinking Giuseppe has already went to war. So far, he's been safe. And Leonarda is feeling like what she's doing back home and her war efforts must be the reason for this. Because in walks victim number 3, Virginia. Virginia was described as a former opera singer who wanted to secure her dream job in Florence. Much like Faustina and Francesca, Virginia also trusted Leonarda based on her reputation, so she went to her to, secure that job. Virginia met the same fate as the two before her, but not without Leonardo convincing her to again write letters and send postcards to her loved ones and friends, telling them that she was moving. So this is where Leonarda didn't do her research. She assumed that Virginia was the same as the other ladies who were either lonely or didn't have any real close connections. But when Virginia sent that letter to her sister-in-law wasn't falling for it. That did not seem something that was within character with Virginia. And she was like, no, something is going on here. And she contacted the local chief of police and said, we need to investigate this. Now, me personally, I've told my family and now I'm telling my YouTube community, if I go missing, it was not on purpose. I have 2 children who I would never leave. I just would not. That's not something that I ever plan on getting up and doing. So if I'm missing, I am truly missing. Report me. Report me somewhere and say, Ramera has disappeared. She has 2 children. She would not leave. Look for her. Okay? I would not send you a letter, a postcard, a text, a Snapchat, none of that. If I'm missing, find me. Please and thank you. Now, due to a very loving and protective sister-in-law, this launched an investigation into the disappearances that's been happening. People have been disappearing around now at this point. So with this investigation, witnesses actually came forward and said that the last person that they saw any of these women with was Leonarda. There wasn't really anything that Leonardo could say or do to persuade them to look at other suspects. So she actually had no other choice but to confess. So she did confess to the murders of these 3 women, and she did stand trial. Not only did she stand trial, she showed no remorse to anyone. She actually went on later in life to describe what she did to the victims. I am going to say this as less gory as possible, but you really have to understand, not even understand, I don't think it's for us to understand, but you really have to get into like the human psyche of these people. So with her first 2 victims, not only did she execute her heinous crimes with an axe, she then cooked them in a pot, turned them into tea cakes, and served them to her husband and guests. Like she was just serving tea cakes to people with human remains. Like that's what she was doing. Now, again, she was known as the soap maker of Correggio. That's what she did with Virginia. She dismembered her, cooked her down until she became mush, added a bottle of cologne, and turned her into soap. Not only did this woman turn her into soap, she gave it out as gifts. Now, I know the tea cakes was bad, but to actually, no, they're both all bad, all bad. They're all bad. There's no ifs. Scratch that. And now, ironically, I'm going to tell you that she was sentenced to 30 years in prison and only 3 years in an asylum. So even back then, the criminal justice system, well, it wasn't the American criminal justice system, so I can't even really say that, but I guess even back then, like 3 years, that's really all she got for being insane and serving her husband people tea cakes, and having people wash with, I'm making soap. I'm sorry. This turned darker than I thought. Leonarda's husband and her son also stood trial, but they were acquitted because they said that they had no knowledge of actual murder. They were accomplices in some things, but they didn't know that a murder took place. So let's say they washed the dishes, or they did, I don't know how you can't tell, but yeah, apparently they were acquitted. They said they didn't know. Leonarda passed away at the age of 76 due to illness while serving time in the criminal asylum. There is actually a museum in Rome that now houses the items related to her case, including the axe and the pot used in the murders, serving as a grim reminder of the horrors she committed. And that has been the story of Leonarda, the soap maker of Correggio. Thank you for joining me on this dark and fascinating journey. If you found this video interesting, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. If you want to keep the conversation alive, head down to the comments and share your thoughts, questions, or even suggestions for future cases. Until next time, self-care and stay safe.